Welcome, guys. It's an absolute privilege to have you here as we dive into exploring what, for me, is such a fundamentally important topic in the context of cancer survivorship, and one that is unfortunately not explored enough, not propagated enough, not discussed enough in the arena of developing a fully integrative cancer survivorship protocol. And it's the transformative, profound impact that our circadian rhythm, our circadian biology plays upon, on the one hand, either its powerful anti-cancer actions, or on the other hand, its powerful cancer supporting actions. So the circadian rhythm is either very, very helpful and very, very healing, or very, very harming. And in this webinar, I want to talk through what it's all about, what the circadian rhythm is, what circadian medicine is, the evidence around it, and why it's so integral within the arena of cancer survivorship. Um, so a quick introduction. So my name's Dr. Sam Watts. My background is in cancer survivorship research. I worked in the NHS in the UK, the National Health Service, for over 15 years, running a variety of different clinical studies and trials within the field of cancer care. And my burning passion, in many ways an obsession, is trying to understand the mechanisms, the variables that are predictive of exceptional cancer survivorship. And this is a field of research that deals with trying to understand how and the ways in which people with an incurable prognosis, usually a very poor prognosis, defy the odds and go on to survive for 5, 7, 10+ years. Because what these exceptional cancer patients, they're called ECAPs, exceptional cancer patients, achieve is clinically impossible. But we know it's not. It happens regularly. Okay. And trying to understand, well, how do these exceptional cancer patients become exceptional? What do they do that allows them to beat the odds, beat the statistics, and regain full health and long-term survival in the face of what is labeled as an incurable disease? And over the last 15, 20 years, I've had the privilege of meeting and working with so many of these ECAPs, these exceptional cancer patients. And my work is trying to understand how we can learn from them and package what we learn into frameworks that we can give to everyone else with cancer to maximize, one, their quality of life, but just as importantly, the quantity of life, how long we live for. Okay. I also am trained in Ayurvedic medicine, which is a holistic, natural system of medicine that's another real passion of mine. And those two areas merge beautifully, actually, when we look at the arena, the evidence of cancer survivorship. And before we start, and before we dive into the actual content of this webinar, I just want to say that the content we will be discussing today comes from my new book. I'm super excited to introduce to the world. It's called The Ayurvedic Approach to Cancer. And what that book does, and my motivation for writing the book, was to package up everything I've learned over the last 15, 20 years around what is most predictive of allowing people with cancer to become exceptional, to maximize their quality of life, to mobilize their own healing mechanisms, and to maximize their chance of living longer and in better health. Okay, and it draws upon the Western clinical research of exceptional cancer survivorship and dovetails that with the Ayurvedic approaches, the actual practical tools, the techniques, the herbal medicines, the dietary frameworks, the lifestyle frameworks that I have seen being most predictive of allowing us to thrive in the face of cancer. So it's completely evidence-based. Every tool, technique, practice, herb, food included within the book is evidence-based and supported by published peer-reviewed clinical research. So it's very much my way of trying to create a singular blueprint, a unified theory for optimizing survivorship. Okay. And the book comes out in February the 6th, 2025. But as a pre-order exclusive bonus, if you pre-order the book before December the 31st, before the end of the year, you get completely free access to a 4-week online, fully interactive online survivorship course called The Science and Secrets of Survivorship. That's made up of 4 one-hour sessions delivered on Zoom. With questions and answers. The sessions are fully recorded, so you get lifetime access. Okay, we run that course a couple of times a year. The course usually retails at £499, but you get completely free access when you pre-order the book. Okay, the book is available now. You'll find it in the links around this video on this webpage. You can pre-order for £16.99. Okay, and like I say, you'll get free access to the 4-week course. Okay, and I'd love to see you there when we start in January. So the aim of this webinar is to explore the field of circadian medicine, to discuss the profound, truly profound importance of something called circadian alignment. Okay, this is the hallowed field of cancer survivorship, from the genetic level all the way through to the cellular level. And then looking at the opposite of that, which is the catastrophic, in many cases, the catastrophic dangers of circadian dysfunction, circadian disruption relevant to survivorship. And then looking at some practical tools that we can actually implement right away, straight off the bat, easily and sustainably, to allow us to move into circadian alignment. So what is the circadian rhythm? I'm sure most people have probably heard of the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the 24-hour cycle that governs the workings of every single organic thing on the planet, from a bacteria to a moss to a tree to a leopard to a polar bear and to a human. Okay, so it's a perfectly calibrated 24-hour inner clock. Okay. That is regulated by light, by sunlight, ultimately. Okay. And it's the single most powerful evolutionary driver and dictator and regulator of physiological function in every species, like I say, including humans. Okay. And the magnitude of this, the significance of this in every context, every arena of health, is profound. Okay, because there is not one cell in the human body that isn't directly regulated by the functionality of the circadian rhythm. Okay, the circadian rhythm will dictate what that cell does, when it does it, how it does it, to make sure it's doing it in the right way, to make sure it's maximizing its ability to prevent disease, and also to maximize its ability to manage disease should it occur. So that's happening across every single one of the 50 trillion cells in our body, individually, harmoniously. Everything that the cells of our body, therefore the tissues of our body, and therefore the organs of our body, and therefore our whole body, the way our body is working, from the micro to the macro, is governed and regulated by the circadian rhythm. Okay. And to emphasize just how profound this research is, it won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2017. Okay, the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology, the highest accolade, the upper echelon of clinical research. The Nobel Prize, there's nothing bigger, there's nothing more important. And the fact that what won the Nobel Prize in 2017 was entirely around the circadian rhythm, and the relevance and the importance of it in the context of health and disease shows how relevant it is. And that's true of everyone all of the time, whether we're 18 or whether we're 118, whether we're healthy or whether we're sick. The circadian rhythm lays the genetic foundation of health, but it takes on even more significance, even more relevance in the context of cancer survivorship. Okay, and this is a field that's exploding. I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the lay press and newspapers and magazines, rather than just in medical journals and conferences. It's the new frontier in many ways of cancer survivorship, because it has a direct link upon cancer cell biology, cancer cell formation, cancer cell destruction, our immune responses to cancer, cancer progression rates, cancer survivorship rates, cancer mortality rates, and on and on and on. Okay, so this is, if you're listening to this because you're living with cancer, or you're supporting someone who is, in my experience, people, it's great that we're so educated and so well versed on the importance of changing our diet, adopting an anti-cancer diet, mobilizing the metabolic approaches to cancer, using supplements and herbal medicines and exercise and meditation and all these things that are integral. But this is often the missing piece of the puzzle, and that's why I was motivated to obviously create this webinar. So if we look at one of the most powerful, I guess, summary points here around the implications of the circadian rhythm relevant to cancer, this quote, I think, pretty much sums it up, in that circadian disruption, which is where we're living in a body that isn't aligned with the circadian rhythm. Okay, so circadian disruption represents an inherent trait. Okay, not an occasional trait or a relatively insignificant trait, but an inherent trait in the majority of all cancer cells. And the re-establishment of proper circadian alignment in the body at large, but also the cancer cells specifically, can help to slow down and in some cases actually inhibit cancer cell development and progression. That is a paradigm changing summary. Okay. And there's no real gray area here. We can't really exist in a no man's land. We're either in circadian alignment, which is synonymous with health, or we are in circadian dysfunction, which is synonymous with disease. And it's very much a seesaw. As one improves, the other reduces. So the more circadian aligned we are, the less predisposed or at risk we are for disease development and progression, including cancer. But the more circadian misaligned we are, the more our circadian rhythm is dysfunctional, the lower our immune capacity, our disease resistance. And there's not really anything in the middle. So what we need to be doing is making sure that every day, day by day, week by week, month by month, we are operating and living and cultivating a lifestyle that moves us as strongly onto the left-hand side of that seesaw into circadian alignment, because then we mobilize all of the cancer inhibiting, cancer suppressing, immunomodulating benefits of circadian alignment. So just a little bit of background around what the circadian rhythm and the circadian alignment is all about. So to do that, we have to dive deep into the brain, into a tiny, tiny part of the brain, which is perhaps one of the most important parts of the brain in terms of the overall impact upon our physiology, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, okay, or the SCN. And we can think of the SCN as the body's master timekeeper. Okay, it's the Big Ben of the body. Okay, it's the body clock. If you've ever gone on a long haul flight, you've arrived and you've crossed time zones or date zones, and you can't sleep, and you're constipated, and you're wide awake in the middle of the night, and you're tired in the middle of the day. That's because your SCN is completely confused. It doesn't know where it is. So you experience fatigue and jet lag. Okay. So the SCN is the body's it's the body's master clock. It's the timekeeper, and it lives in the brain. And what that SCN does is that it regulates the body in two ways: a solar cycle and a lunar cycle. So in the morning, when the sun comes up, and the significance of that is profound, and I'll talk about that at the end of the webinar, because the whole circadian alignment is regulated and reset every day in the morning by early morning sun exposure, and I'll talk about that, like I say, towards the end. So when the sun comes up and the UVA, UVB of the early morning sun hits our eyes, that tells the SCN that a new day is beginning. And that turns on certain genes that regulate everything in the body across 50 trillion cells that have to happen exclusively in the daytime to optimize health and suppress disease, whether that's daytime immune regulation, firing up metabolism, optimizing digestive strength, increasing blood pressure, increasing our energy systems. so that we're functioning optimally all the way through the daylight hours. And then as the sun sets and nighttime falls, the absence of light tells the SCN that the day is ending. Okay, we are diurnal mammals. We're daytime mammals. We're not nocturnal. So as the sun sets and it gets dark, the master timekeeper, the SCN in the brain says it's now nighttime. So I need to turn off all of the daytime activities and turn on all of the activities in the body that have to happen exclusively during the night. So things like detoxification pathways, nocturnal immune repair, allowing the immune system to repair all of the damage incurred through the day, regulating inflammatory responses, calibrating melatonin and sleep hormones, all of these kinds of things. And then that activity continues all the way through until the sun comes up again. And that's called a day lived in circadian alignment, where we are operating in a body that's perfectly calibrated in daylight and nighttime to sustain optimal health. And that's governed by the master brain, the master clock in the body, the SCN. But we also have periphery clocks. Okay, and every single cell in the body has a periphery clock. So every cell has its own clock. And when those two are working in harmony, when the master timekeeper in the brain and the individual cells the individual clocks in every cell in our body, when they are working in harmony, that's when we are physiologically in circadian alignment. Okay. So for example, as the sun comes up and the daylight arrives, because it's light, the brain realizes it will be eating soon, so it fires up digestion. It fires up the secretion of hydrochloric acid and liver enzymes and bile flow to prepare us to eat, because that's what we do in the daytime. Okay, we never eat, evolutionary speaking, we would never eat at the nighttime. So the brain is saying it's daytime, let's eat. And then the cells of our digestive system are aligned with that. They fire up because they're operating in the right way, so that when we receive food, our entire digestive system is optimized to receive food. So the individual cells are aligned with the master clock in the brain. That applies to our immune cells, our heart cells, everything. Okay, so circadian alignment is this hallowed, profoundly healing state where every single cell in the body and the clock it contains is aligned to the master clock in the brain. So you have something called entrainment, circadian entrainment, which is where the whole body is operating in a perfectly calibrated way. But, for every species on the planet, maintaining circadian alignment appears to be easy. Okay. We know that virtually every mammal on the planet rises with the sun and goes to bed with the sun. We know that every, daytime active mammal only eats when the sun is up and never eats at nighttime. Okay. We know that daytime active mammals only ever sleep when it's dark. They never sleep when it's light. Okay, the list goes on. So every species is able to maintain optimal circadian alignment very easily. But we as humans have used our massive brain to engineer a world where we can do what we want when we want. We can eat 24 hours a day. We can sleep when we want. We can work when we want. We can exercise when we want. We can wake up early. We can wake up late. We can go to bed early. We can go to bed late. We can check emails at 3 a.m. We can scroll through social media at 10 at night. We can do what we want. Okay. And no other species on the planet unequivocally does that. It's just us. So we have engineered a world that makes it very hard to sustain circadian alignment. And what happens is that this creates an imbalance between the clocks in our cells and the message coming from the master clock in the brain. Okay. And as a simple example of that, late night eating. Okay, it's one of the most powerful and reliable causes of circadian disruption. So what would happen is, as we move into 8, 9, 10 p.m., it's getting dark. It's either dark or getting dark, and the brain says the day has ended. Okay, we don't eat at nighttime because that's evolutionary. We don't do that because we couldn't ever have hunted, so we never ate. Okay, so we are not designed to eat at night. Okay, so when the nighttime clock genes turn on, all of the cells of the digestive system are told to wind down because it's nighttime. We're not going to be receiving food. But if we then eat food, the cells in the digestive system have to fire up. They've got no choice because we put food in. And then you've got dysfunction, you've got conflict. The clock in the brain is saying wind down because we're going to go to sleep now and we shouldn't be eating. But the cells in the digestive system are having to fire up because we put food in. What does that do? It causes systemic inflammation. Okay, we know it causes toxicity, it causes dysbiosis, it damages the microbiome, it profoundly suppresses our immune activity, particularly the immune activity from within our gut, our microbiota. Okay. Um, and that's just a singular example of how the conflict between the message from the master clock in the brain and the activity of our cells creates circadian disruption. And there are a million things that do that. Okay, looking at blue screens, looking at iPhones and tablets after about 8 p.m. Okay, causes this huge circadian disruption, and that suppresses melatonin, which then reduces the quality of our sleep. That then affects energy and immunity and everything else. Okay, so there's dozens and dozens of variables that cause this circadian disruption. But at the bottom line, all circadian disruption is a conflicted, confused, poorly functioning physiology that is caused by dysregulation, misalignment between the master clock in the brain and the individual clocks in our cells. But the impacts are catastrophic, potentially in the context of cancer. And so damaging and so dangerous is the issue of circadian dysfunction that the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified it as a type 2 group human carcinogen. Okay, it's a group 2A human carcinogen, which means it's clinically proven to optimize or increase the chances of malignant cell growth. Okay, in the same way that Teflon and BPA, and tobacco and tar, all the different carcinogens available and in the world that we're exposed to, we think of them as things that we eat or smoke or ingest. Okay, this is a lifestyle carcinogen. Okay, it is linked to higher rates of cancer and faster cancer promotion. And here are just a couple of studies just to emphasize this around the impacts, one in rodents and one in humans. So some of the earlier research around circadian disruption and cancer subjected mice to jet lag by continually changing their light dark cycles. So they essentially created long haul travel. So they would let some sleep for, a normal night's sleep, and then they would wake them up with sunlight, and then after 2 hours it would be dark again, and all kinds of dysregulation. Okay, so their circadian rhythm was completely out of kilter. And what happened was that those mice who were circadian dysfunction experienced significantly higher rates of cancer, and they had significantly higher rates of cancer promotion and metastases and invasion, and died significantly sooner than mice keeping normal circadian cycles. Okay, who actually had very low levels of cancer compared to normative values. And there were dozens of studies like this that then paved the way for human studies. And one of the most important of these looked at the effects of circadian disruption in survival times. Actually, how does it impact upon how long we live for in humans, adults with brain cancer, okay, glioma? And the results revealed that when these people with the same diagnosis, the same prognosis, with the same brain cancer, when those people maintained circadian alignment in terms of their overall body and their overall lifestyle, that circadian alignment, yes, it aligned the healthy cells, but it also created alignment in the cancer cells. And when those brain cancer cells maintained high levels of circadian alignment, it allowed the individuals with brain cancer to live significantly longer than those people with the same cancer and the same prognosis who were not in circadian alignment. Everything else was the same. Their treatments, like I said, their prognosis, they were a match group. And the biggest predictor of living longer was whether they were operating from a place of circadian alignment or circadian dysfunction. So now we have a very rapidly expanding field of research to show that actually circadian alignment, yes, it affects cancer biology. It affects the ability of cancer to invade neighboring tissue and spread. It can facilitate faster growth rates, and all of that conspires to actually, help us live longer or reduce how long we live based upon whether we are aligned or misaligned. Okay, so this is not a small thing. This is not an insignificant thing. It's not a small win or a micro win. This is foundational. This is profound at the very, very base level of the human body, the genes. Okay. So it is a survivorship imperative. Okay. It's unequivocal now. It's not a case of maybe, sometimes, could it. This is black and white. And whilst the mechanisms by which the circadian system can so significantly impact upon cancer cell behavior, I think there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. There's a lot of things that aren't fully understood in terms of the actual causality. How does circadian alignment allow us to live longer? Or how does it suppress cancer growth? We know it does, but there's not that much clarity on how. We're not so much worried about that. What we do know is that it's circadian disruption and the signaling that comes from it is implicated in most of the pathways and mechanisms that cancer uses to develop, spread, and grow more quickly. Whether that's physiological, whether it's inflammatory, whether it's immunological, whether it's metabolic. Okay, it doesn't matter. And we also know a key mechanism here, the one that I'm particularly interested in, is that we know when cancer cells are not aligned and when our overall physiology is operating in a place of circadian dysfunction, we know that our immune system is less able to identify cancer cells and destroy them. And we know that cancer cells are more effective at evading immune destruction. And that, I think, is probably one of the main mechanisms linking circadian dysfunction to poorer survivorship. Okay, so it's an imperative. Okay, if we're living with cancer, if we're surviving from cancer, if we're in remission from cancer, it doesn't matter. Even if we're trying to prevent cancer, we need to act in a way that can help maintain circadian alignment. And this is a huge field. There's so many things that we need to do, that we can do, that will facilitate that. I want to just talk about the ones that are easiest, simplest, and most evidence-based, and pack a hefty punch in terms of impact. And actually, whilst Western medicine leads the way in understanding the actual genetic research, there's quite a famous saying, which is that the West is looking to the East to understand how to actually create a lifestyle blueprint that allows us to sustain circadian alignment. And after 15, 20 years of researching this, I absolutely am convinced that Ayurveda has the ultimate blueprint for allowing us to maintain circadian alignment effortlessly, easily, sustainably. And it's called dinacharya, okay, which means our daily routine. It's a time-tested, evidence-based, all-encompassing blueprint for engineering, structuring our life in a way that will allow us to make sure that every part of our day is aligned to the circadian rhythm in a way that unleashes all of these mechanisms. Okay. And the three easiest ways, the three most important ways to facilitate this is waking times, eating times, and sleep. Okay. The first one is unequivocally the most important. It's kind of mandatory, sacrosanct, because it is the trigger on every 24-hour cycle. Because we can't enter circadian alignment permanently. We have to reset it every day. You could be aligned for 300 days, but then if you get one day wrong, then you are disaligned. Okay, it resets. And every single day we have the opportunity for entraining our circadian alignment or disentraining it. Okay, and that ability comes down to one thing and one thing only, and it's exposure to UVA, UVB sunlight. Okay. And it doesn't mean sunlight in terms of having to have a clear sky. Doesn't matter if it's cloudy, raining, snowy, foggy. It doesn't matter. Okay. It's the frequency of the light. So what that means is that our 24-hour circadian clock is reset every day in the first 90 minutes after sunrise. So that obviously fluctuates a lot over the course of a year, particularly if you're in the northern latitudes, and you've got daylight saving. And I'll talk about that in a second. But when the sun comes up at sunrise, the next 90 minutes, okay, if we can expose our eyes to that sunlight, whether it's going outside, opening the curtains, opening the blinds, going for a walk, opening the back door and just looking out into the garden, doesn't really matter. That light hits the retina in the eye, is carried through to the SCN in the brain, and tells the master clock that it is a new day. Okay, the day has just begun, because the frequency of this light only occurs in the first 90 minutes of every day. It's a completely unique frequency that tells the brain that it's a new day, that tells the SCN to initiate all of the daytime activity. So at that point, we are entrained, we are circadian aligned for the next 24 hours. Okay. If we miss that early morning exposure, then the brain hasn't had the cue that it's a new day, and it doesn't entrain, and then we enter circadian misalignment or circadian dysfunction. Okay. So we absolutely, as a mandatory component of health, we need to be triggering this every day. In spring and summer, where I live in England, that's relatively easy. It just means, even in the longest day, sunrise is about 5 in the morning. So as long as we're exposing our eyes to sunlight before 6:30, then we're getting these benefits. It's actually harder in winter because the sun doesn't come up till about 7:30, and for a lot of people, we have to be up earlier, out the house earlier, school runs, work, etc., etc. So the only way to mitigate that is to buy sun lamps, which are lamps which you can buy very easily, very cheaply now. They used to be very expensive, but they're very cheap now, that you can put in your kitchen, as a lamp, or on your bedside table. And then you turn that on when you get up. And then when you're making breakfast or making a cup of tea or doing the kids' packed lunches or whatever we do in the morning, it emits exactly the same frequency as the sun. So it tricks the brain into entraining, because it's connecting the right frequency of light to the retina, to the SCN, to the master clock in the brain. Okay. So the most important thing is that we are exposing our eyes to the UVA, the unique UVA, UVB frequency of light that only occurs in the first 90 minutes of the day, be that through natural light, be it through sun lamps, because that entrains everything over the next 24-hour cycle. It's non-negotiable in terms of circadian alignment. Second thing is eating times, circadian nutrition. This is a rapidly exploding field of circadian medicine. And it's to do with the fact that we are evolutionary designed to eat at certain times of the day. And we know that we have 3 digestive peaks or spikes typically. And that is, again, dictated and triggered by that early morning sunlight. The SCN in the brain, the master clock in the brain, is exposed to that sunlight. It tells the body the day is beginning because the sun is up. Because the sun is up, you'll be eating soon. So it stimulates digestion. And that's fundamental, because if you're optimizing or tweaking or modifying your diet in an anti-cancer way, then if you're putting that anti-cancer goodness in, you need to make sure that you're digesting it properly, because anti-cancer foods only become anti-cancer when the compounds they contain enter our cells. Until that point, it's just the potential for anti-cancer actions. What dictates the ability of those compounds to get into our cells is our digestive strength. What governs our digestive strength? Our circadian alignment. Okay, so typically there are 3 digestive spikes a day. The first one is between about 7 in the morning and about 8:30. That's when our hydrochloric acid, our liver flow, our bile flow, our pancreatic enzymes, our whole metabolic system is primed to receive food. Put food in there, break it down quickly, we digest it quickly, we deliver nutrients quickly. It then drops right down again and it increases to the biggest spike of the day, which is between about 12 noon and about 2 p.m. That's when we are metabolically primed to eat the most food. Then it drops right down again and has the third and lowest spike of the day, which is somewhere between about 6 and 7:30 in the evening. Okay. And then metabolic function drops right down to virtually flatline until the following morning. Okay. If we are eating roughly at those times, it is the linchpin to optimal metabolic function, optimal delivery of anti-cancer nutrients, optimal circadian alignment. If we're eating outside of those times, it creates conflict between the cells in our body, the clock in the brain, and we move into circadian dysfunction. Okay, so we need to be eating at the right times, and this is in my book, The Ayurvedic Approach to Cancer. This is fundamental because there's a whole module devoted, a whole chapter devoted to anti-cancer digestion. Because we're not what we eat, we're what we digest, and that comes down to our the alignment, the circadian alignment of our metabolic digestive systems. So we're getting up at the right time. We're exposing our eyes to the UVA, UVB frequency. We're eating at the right times. The third most important thing is sleep. Okay, and melatonin. And the key point here is regularity, because our nervous system is predictive. Okay, it predicts what's happening next, and if we are constantly changing our bedtime. Sometimes we're going to bed at 9 at night. Sometimes it's 11 at night. You know, our nervous system, our brain can never predict when bedtime will be. And if it can't predict it, it will hold back and it will say, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to bed now, but yesterday I didn't. So I'm not going to release melatonin. I'm not going to, release all of the neurotransmitters that support sleep in case I have to stay awake again. And then that creates poor melatonin secretion, poor melatonin metabolism, poor GABA regulation, which is a sleep neurotransmitter, and sleep becomes dysfunctional. And then suddenly we are in circadian dysfunction again because it's 11 p.m. The brain is saying we should be asleep, but the cells of our body are saying, well, I'm actually awake, and we get conflict. Okay, so hormonally speaking, in terms of the hormone work, in terms of the circadian alignment work, the optimal time for being asleep is between 10 and 10:30 p.m. Okay, that is when we are evolutionary and hormonally primed and neurologically primed to enter into the deepest, most restful, most inherent sleep pattern. Okay. So, and that then means when it gets to 11, 11:30, 12 at night, the brain is saying it's dark, I need to be asleep. And the cells are saying, well, I am asleep because I'm turned down. And then we maintain circadian alignment. And then we sleep through the night, we sleep well, we sleep deeply, we sleep blissfully because we are hormonally primed for sleep. We wake up effortlessly, we expose our eyes to UVA, UVB, and then the cycle starts again. And in Ayurveda, that's called one day lived in bliss. Okay, which is one of the founding tenets of Dinacharya, this blueprint for circadian alignment. And there are other things as well in terms of when we exercise and all kinds of other things. But that's the foundation. Okay. And suddenly we do that day after day, week after week, month after month. That's not a small change. That is a fundamental shift in the way our body is working generally, but specifically in the context of cancer suppression. Okay, so look at your routines, look at your lifestyle, and try to align it with this kind of pattern. Okay. But just to say, we only have only scratched the surface with regards to the context and the concepts of circadian alignment. And circadian alignment is just one part of the overarching survivorship blueprint that I think that the research tells us is so integral to optimizing our survivorship. Okay, the full blueprint, like I say, is covered in my new book. The book comes with extensive online resources. It's got recipes and meal plans and guided meditations and guided mental imagery scripts, visualizations. It's got yoga flows. It's got loads of resources that come with the book as online resources. Like I say, If you pre-order the book before Christmas, you get completely free access to the 4-week online live course called The Science and Secrets of Survivorship. That course is worth £499, but you get it completely free when you pre-order the book via the links around this video on this webpage. Okay, you can order through Amazon for £16.99. So it's an absolute privilege to be here with you today. I hope you found that helpful. I can't emphasize enough how truly important this field is, this concept is. So please do try and adopt it, and have a lovely rest of the day, and take care.